If you had seen me that day walking into the party in a tailored navy suit, silent among the laughter, you might have thought I was just another guest. But I wasn't. I was the daughter no one had invited. I was the forgotten one. The footnote in a legacy speech, the name left off the slideshow. It was my father's 70th birthday and retirement celebration. 100 guests, champagne fountains, string lights wrapped around white trellises, a jazz band playing beneath the soft glow of garden lanterns. But I wasn't on the list. I wasn't supposed to be there. And yet I walked in calm, quiet folder in hand. Inside that leather folder was a single sheet of paper, a gift. One my father would later regret more than anything he'd ever lost. But to understand why that moment shattered the silence, I need to tell you what came before. My name is Emma Carter. I was adopted when I was just a baby. My mother, Evelyn, used to tell me bedtime stories curled under a quilt on cool Sacramento nights. She'd stroke my hair and whisper, "You didn't grow in my belly, Emma, but you grew in my heart." I memorized that line like scripture. To a little girl, those words meant everything. They told me I belonged. They wrapped me in a safety I didn't yet know could vanish. My father, Richard Carter, was a pillar of the local banking community, cold, traditional, firm. But I remember him smiling once when I brought home a first-place ribbon from the science fair. He looked proud, or maybe I imagined that. We weren't rich, but we had a little pink house with a creaky porch and a backyard big enough for dreams. I had a pink bike with a ribboned basket Sunday pancakes that smelled like cinnamon and glow-in-the-dark stars pasted to my ceiling. I thought that was what family felt like, warmth that didn't need proving. For the first 8 years of my life, I believed I was chosen, special, loved. But then everything changed. It was the summer Evelyn got pregnant. I remember sitting on the cold vinyl bench in the hospital waiting room, hugging a stuffed giraffe labeled Big Sister. The nurse smiled when she handed it to me. I was going to meet my baby brother. His name was Nathan. And from the moment he arrived, everything shifted. At first, I told myself it was normal. Babies needed attention. They cried and cooed and demanded things. But slowly, the center of our family's universe tilted, and I was no longer at its core. Where once I had pancake breakfasts and bedtime lullabies, now there were bottles, diaper changes, and hushed voices in the nursery. I didn't mind helping. I wanted to be a good sister. But helping turned into invisibility. At school pickup, I'd run toward the car waving a painting I'd worked on all day. "Look, Mom," I'd shout. She'd glance at it, smile weakly, and turn back to Nathan in his car seat, making faces to make him giggle. At dinner one evening, I accidentally spilled my juice while reaching for the salt. My father, usually so composed, snapped. "This one's not even blood," he muttered under his breath, grabbing a napkin. He didn't know I heard, but I did, and I never forgot. After that, everything turned colder. The bedtime stories stopped. My straight-A report cards were met with nods while Nathan's crayon scribbles were framed and hung in the hallway. I became the helper, the extra hand, the built-in babysitter, no longer a daughter, just the adopted one. Still, I tried. I made birthday cards with glitter glue, cooked small meals when Evelyn was tired, memorized every piano recital piece hoping they'd come watch. But the more I tried, the more invisible I became. I was chasing a kind of love that always stayed a step ahead of me, just out of reach. Until one day, I stopped running. By the time I was 15, I stopped believing I was special. Because in that house, being adopted didn't make me chosen, it made me optional. I became a shadow in my own home. Not rebellious, not loud, just quiet. Present but unseen. Evelyn stopped asking about my day. Richard didn't look up from his paper. Nathan. He didn't remember a time before me, so to him, I was just part of the furniture, someone who made lunch and reminded him to take his backpack. I learned how to disappear without making a sound. I stopped trying to earn what would never be given. Instead, I planned. I studied while they watched movies in the living room. I volunteered at the library on weekends. I spent nights at my desk sketching floor plans in pencil. Tiny houses with solar panels, green roofs, wide windows that welcomed the sun. I didn't know what they would become. I just knew I needed to build something, anything, something of my own. And so I set a quiet goal: survive until 18, then leave, forever. The morning of my 18th birthday, I got up early. No decorations, no cake, no happy birthday. Just a silent breakfast, cold toast on a chipped plate, and the sound of my father rustling his newspaper. I looked around that kitchen one last time. The tile I used to sit on while Evelyn made soup, the fridge covered in Nathan's magnets but none of my awards, the doorway where Richard once measured our heights, stopping mine at age 9. I had 2 duffel bags, one with clothes, one with textbooks, a coffee thermos, and a manila folder containing my scholarship acceptance letter, and a blueprint of a house I'd been designing since I was 13, my dream home, drawn by hand, a promise to myself. One day I'll live in something I built, something no one can take from me. When I reached the front door, Evelyn looked up briefly. "Good luck out there," she said. No hug, no emotion, just words, as flat as drywall. Richard didn't even look up. Nathan, now 9, was playing video games in the next room. He didn't notice I was leaving, and that's when it hit me. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was free. I boarded a Greyhound bus to San Diego that afternoon with $412 in my wallet, a plastic ID, and no idea what came next. But I had something no one in that house ever gave me: direction. I wanted to study sustainable architecture, not just to design buildings, but to design belonging, shelter, stability, things I'd never had but desperately wanted to give. The first year nearly broke me. I worked the night shift at a 24-hour gym folding towels and checking IDs for bodybuilders who barely saw me. I tutored high schoolers in algebra on weekends. I lived in a garage apartment with no heating, a cracked window sealed with duct tape, and a mattress on the floor that smelled like dust. Dinner was usually canned soup, sometimes leftovers from the cafe where I studied during the day. But every time I felt like quitting, I pictured my father's face, not angry, not cruel, just indifferent. And I remembered those words he didn't know I heard at dinner so many years ago: "This one's not even blood." That sentence meant as a throwaway became fuel. Sometimes rock bottom doesn't feel like a fall. It feels like exhaustion. A quiet breaking so silent you almost don't notice until there's nothing left to give. By my 3rd year in San Diego, I was running on fumes, sleep-deprived, emotionally drained. I was holding everything together with grit duct tape and caffeine. On paper, I was succeeding top of my class. Dean's List. A part-time job at an eco-architecture lab designing hypothetical housing solutions for low-income neighborhoods. But inside, I was unraveling. No birthday calls, no care packages, no text from Evelyn asking if I was eating enough. Nothing. Silence. I remember one night vividly. I had just come back from my night shift, changed out of my gym uniform, and collapsed on the floor, too tired to climb into bed. My stomach growled, but the only thing in my fridge was half a lemon and expired yogurt and some wilting spinach. I sat in the dark. No music, no light. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the hollow sound of someone who didn't matter to anyone. I remember whispering into the silence, "Do they even remember I exist?" And the worst part, I already knew the answer. But it was also in that stillness alone on a concrete floor that something hardened inside me. Not bitterness, not vengeance, conviction. If I couldn't belong to them, then I'd build a life so complete, so undeniable, they'd have no choice but to notice. The breakthrough came in the form of an internship, unexpected, underpaid, and buried in emails. I almost didn't check. A local eco-design firm was looking for someone to assist on a small urban renewal project. The office was small, 4 people, a dog named Mason, and a wall of recycled wood panels showcasing their blueprints. My job, drafting plans, visiting low-income housing sites, and figuring out how to repurpose materials most firms would trash. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. We built sustainable additions to public schools, retrofitted cracked apartment buildings with solar tiles, designed passive cooling systems out of shipping containers. Every screw, every beam, every bolt, it mattered. Then came the project that would change my life. A woman named Trina Delgado, a single mom who just inherited a small rundown lot in Chula Vista, walked into our office with tear-stained cheeks and one simple question: can anyone help me build a home? Every other firm had quoted her numbers she couldn't afford. No one listened, but I did. I pulled out a notepad, listened to her story, sketched a design using reclaimed materials, budget solar solutions, and local volunteers. 6 months later, we handed her the keys. It wasn't big, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, but it was filled with light. It breathed. It held space for her and her son like a promise. And that house, it made the front page of the San Diego Union Tribune, a sustainable sanctuary for a single mother. My name wasn't the headline, but it was in the byline. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. The phone started ringing. Other women, nonprofits, developers with vision. That one act of listening, of building not for profit but for people, became the seed. And that seed grew into something I never saw coming. They didn't know what I was building, because while they erased me from their lives, I was building something that would outlast every one of their legacies. After Trina's project, the word started to spread, slowly, quietly, but steadily. People didn't come to me for luxury. They came because I listened, because I didn't talk over them, because I made them feel like they belonged in something that could never be taken away. That's when I started Very, a one-woman design firm with a recycled desk, a free Wix website, and a bank account that barely stayed positive. But I had vision and grit. The first few months were brutal. No calls, no replies, just me and a stack of ideas the world wasn't ready for. Then it happened. A nonprofit called Asking for Help retrofitting a women's shelter with solar. A week later, a small school board wanted plans for eco-friendly portable classrooms. By year 3, I had a 6-person team. We opened an office near Balboa Park with upcycled furniture, a garden rooftop, and the name Very etched into salvaged copper signage out front. It wasn't just a firm, it was a philosophy. We didn't build for ego, we built for belonging. But no matter how high I climbed, I never looked back. I didn't call Richard, didn't message Evelyn, didn't even check Nathan's social media. They had made their choice. And I had made mine. Until one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was from Daniel Choi, a classmate from architecture school. "Hey, just saw your dad on the news. Retirement announcement. Big party coming up. Thought you'd want to know." I stared at the screen. Richard Carter retiring, turning 70, planning a massive party in Sacramento. I hadn't heard his name spoken out loud in over 10 years. At first I ignored it, deleted the text, buried myself in design proposals. But that night, as I sat at my desk reviewing floor plans, a thought crept in. What if I went not to confront, not to be acknowledged, but to prove something to myself, that I had become someone worth seeing, even if they never looked. But I didn't want to make a scene. I wanted to send a message, quiet, final, and unmistakable. And then I remembered a moment buried deep in my childhood. I was 10 years old, sitting on our porch after a bad day at school. I'd been picked last for kickball. "I don't need friends," I muttered. Richard was watering the azaleas. He didn't look up when he said, "You know what matters, Emma owning land. That's how people respect you." He probably forgot that moment, but I didn't. So I found a plot, right by Lake Tahoe, tucked between redwoods with a view of the mountains and a slope that caught the golden hour like a painting. It cost $3.2 million. I didn't blink. I worked with my lawyer, drew up the deed, transferred the title. No press release, no tax write-off. Just a quiet, deliberate gesture. A gift. One that said, I can give you everything you ever valued, even if you gave me nothing. He raised a glass and said, "She's not my biological child, so I forgot to put her name in the will." The crowd laughed. Except me. I walked up, calm, silent, and tore the deed to a $3.2 million estate in half. The day of the party, I wore the navy blue suit from the day Very signed its first city contract. Not flashy, not soft, just sharp, grounded. A suit that said, "I'm here on business." The folder was leather-bound. Inside was the property deed for Lake Tahoe. On the front, embossed in gold, Richard Carter. The drive to Sacramento was over 8 hours. I didn't play music. I let the silence ride with me like a second passenger. I had no plan for drama, no intention to make a scene. I just wanted to leave the folder, let him decide what it meant. Their house hadn't changed. White picket fence, daisy bushes trimmed with care. The scent of catered food floated through the backyard where guests mingled under pergolas lit with hanging lanterns. I paused at the gate, inhaled, and stepped through. No one noticed at first, but then a familiar voice rang out behind me. "Well, well," Nathan's voice sneered. "If it isn't the long-lost charity case." He was taller, sharper, more smug, holding a drink surrounded by shallow laughter. "Did you take a wrong turn, Emma?" he said louder, drawing attention. "Or just here to make a scene?" I smiled without warmth. "Just dropping off a gift. Let me guess." He chuckled. "One of those Pinterest DIYs mason jar full of dirt." Laughter rippled. I said nothing. I walked straight toward the head table. Richard was giving a toast wine in hand, basking in his legacy. Evelyn stood beside him in a pale green dress, the exact shade I'd imagined. He noticed me mid-sentence. His smile twitched, and then he leaned into the mic. "Before we finish," he said, voice smooth, "I want to announce the terms of my estate." I froze, not because I cared, but because of his next words. To my son Nathan, he said proudly, "I leave the house, the accounts, the land." He looked directly at me. "As for Emma, she's not my biological child, so I forgot to put her name in the will." The crowd laughed. Not a ripple, a wave. Even Evelyn gave a soft chuckle, eyes not meeting mine. Glasses clinked. Someone actually applauded. I didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't cry. I walked calmly toward the head table. Nathan followed me with a smug grin. "So you brought a gift after all," he said. "That's cute." I placed the folder gently in front of the birthday cake, opened it, pulled out the single sheet of paper, the deed, read aloud, "Grant of property transfer, parcel LTA 54, 721, Lake Tahoe County. Total market value $3.2 million. The crowd stilled. "I bought this for you," I said. "Off-grid potential, south-facing slope, view of the mountains." Richard blinked. I paused. Then in front of everyone, I tore the paper in half. Gasps echoed through the backyard. I ripped it again, then again, until nothing remained but shredded pieces fluttering like ash over the cake, the tablecloth, the floor. "It was yours," I said. "Now it's gone." Richard stared, mouth slightly open, face drained of color. For the first time in my life, I saw something real in his eyes. Not arrogance, not charm, just fear and regret. "I didn't come here to beg," I said, voice steady. "I came to show you what I built, without you." And I turned and walked away. No applause, no scene, just the hush of 100 stunned guests watching a woman walk out as quietly as she entered, leaving behind the cost of their cruelty. Whispers followed me through the yard. Did she say $3 million? Why would they do that to her? I reached the gate, stepped out, didn't look back. Behind me, the music resumed, offbeat, uncertain. Buried beneath frosting and candle wax was a deed he'd never get back. I thought it ended when I walked out, but 3 days later, my phone buzzed with a message that made me stop breathing. I didn't answer the unknown number, didn't care to hear excuses. But then a text came in, "You don't know me. My name's Erica. I was at your father's party. I think you should hear what happened after you left." I hesitated, then called. Erica was a junior partner at my father's bank. We'd met once when I was a kid. She told me that after I walked out, no one spoke. Not for minutes. They just stood there, frozen. like someone had pulled the floor out from under them. And then she said the words I never expected. Your dad picked up the pieces. What do you mean? I mean, he got down on his knees, Emma. On the ground. In front of everyone, he picked up the torn pieces of the deed, one by one. Like if he just put it back together, maybe he could fix what he did. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Erica continued. Mr. Clean, you know, from the board, he walked up and said, "You're a fool, Richard. That woman you humiliated built something you couldn't even dream of." Another pause. He said, "She's worth more than everything in your will." The party ended early. Guests left in silence, some in disgust. Evelyn stood alone, repeating, "We didn't know. We didn't know." Nathan tried to laugh it off, called me a drama queen, accused me of faking the deed, but no one laughed with him. Later that night, I got another message, this time from Aunt Carol Richard's sister. We hadn't spoken since I was 15. He's been in his study for hours. The torn deed is on his desk. He won't speak to anyone. I didn't reply. But I didn't sleep either. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering, did he regret it? Did he finally see me? Not as an outsider, not as a mistake, but as his daughter. A week passed, then 2, then a letter arrived. Real paper, handwritten, no return address. Emma, I don't know how to begin this. I suppose that's fitting since I never knew how to begin anything with you. I've reread this page 100 times. I still don't know what to say, except I failed you. I failed to protect the bond we had when you were little. I failed to see what you were becoming. And at that party, I failed as a father in front of everyone. I picked up the pieces, not just the paper, but the truth. I don't know how to make this right, but I want you to know I'm sorry. Richard. Not Dad, just Richard. That should have made it easier. It didn't. I didn't write back. I didn't visit. I didn't call. Instead, I opened my closet and pulled out the old manila folder, the one with my early sketches and dream house drawings. I slid the letter behind the blueprint of the home I designed as a girl. That's where it belonged, with the version of me that still waited for his approval, because I wasn't waiting anymore. The next day I called my project manager. I want to build something, I said, where I thought for a long time, then smiled, Lake Tahoe. We built the Haven, a solar-powered community center with open-air classrooms, garden terraces, and mentoring halls. It stood on the same plot I once gifted and revoked. It was mine now, not a monument to revenge, but a sanctuary, a place where no one felt invisible. Teens who'd aged out of foster care, single moms trying to rebuild, girls who needed someone to tell them they mattered. I showed up every week, sometimes to teach, sometimes just to listen. One afternoon, a girl named Isla 16, guarded eyes full of steel, walked up to me. "You really built this?" she asked. I nodded. Even without a family, I smiled. Especially without a family. She hugged me, without a word, and in that moment, I realized I didn't need Richard to call me his daughter. I didn't need Evelyn's tears. I didn't need Nathan's bitterness. I had created something that lasted, something real, and that not revenge, not money was my legacy. The letter Richard wrote stayed in that folder, untouched, unread again. But sometimes, when the mountain wind rushes through the Haven's cedar trees, I wonder, is he out there watching from a distance, wondering what might have been? Have you ever been erased by the very people who were supposed to love you? Have you ever built something in silence? Something they didn't believe you could share your story below? Because sometimes, the most powerful victories are the quiet ones. Like, subscribe, and never let anyone tell you that you don't belong.